I often felt like I had 3 passports and no home. When I lived in the US, I still felt excluded, unwanted. And I came here and I never felt that. I got my first licensed sponsored job. I actually lost that job whilst my renewal of the visa was processing. Nobody had given me any indication that this wasn't going through. I'd applied, I'd paid the money, and 3 weeks later I get fired from my job. At the time, that if I went back to Israel, they would take me immediately into the army. Russia was already sort of at war with Ukraine. Can't go there. So where the hell am I supposed to go? This situation also had a massive impact on my mental health. I told myself, there is no plan B. I am not leaving. They will drag my dead body out of this country before I leave. I am determined. We are going to make it. I will fight and claw and scream and yell until I get what I want.
Welcome back to London, a video podcast series about finding your way and building a life abroad. Hi, I'm Ellen. I'm your host today. Our guest today, Sophia, is a Russian, Israeli, and American citizen who moved to the UK in 2016 to study politics, sociology, and East European studies at UCL. She has worked in public affairs since 2018. In 2023, she joined Cancer Research UK, the largest cancer charity in the UK and the biggest independent funder of cancer research globally. Sophia's journey as an immigrant in the UK is a powerful testament to her resilience and determination. Not only did she build a career rarely associated with visa sponsorship, but she also has overcome immense challenges to be where she is today, and she will share with us in this episode. Welcome to the show, Sophia. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me.
Did it take you a long time to come?
Yeah, I live in Cambridge, so it's a bit of a trek. And as per usual, on a Saturday, there's a rail replacement bus service. So a journey that should have taken me an hour and 20 minutes took me around 2 hours. But worth it to be here with you.
Oh my God, and I'm very happy to have you here, and obviously after all of that as well. So yeah, can you walk us through your timeline from when you first came to the UK till now?
So I think it's worth saying that when I was 17, 18, I was applying for university. I had quite a few options, obviously, partially because as a US citizen, I had the option to go back to the US. I was living in Copenhagen at the time. My mum used to work for the World Health Organization. So as an international employee, having gone to an international school, I had lots of options, but I always wanted to live in the UK. So I took the shot and I took the opportunity. So I applied for a student visa, which at the time was, I think still is, a tier 4. I was actually rejected on my first time, which is an interesting story, primarily because read the instructions if you're applying to visas, because I didn't read the instructions properly. It was my first time ever applying for a visa, and I was denied my first time. But I reapplied nearly immediately, fixed the problem that I had, and arrived on a tier 4 in 2016. I graduated university, as you said, UCL, in 2019. I got my first licensed sponsored job on what was then tier 2. And I continued on that job until I lost it in September of 2021.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And then I actually lost that job whilst my renewal of the visa was processing.
Oh my God.
So I landed my current job at Cancer Research UK in November. And my original visa from the old job arrived, and I had to immediately reapply for a new one.
Oh my God.
So then I was on a skilled worker visa from December 2023 until August of this year, where I finally got my ILR.
Oh my God, it's such a long journey with so many ups and downs.
It is,
and to be honest, your journey, when we chatted before, was really fascinating to me. And I felt like for someone on a visa, I know the feeling when you feel like rejection, you feel like this is the end. And I feel like if I even just for the student visa, I'd be like, okay, I want to stay in Vietnam. I'm not going anywhere. They will ban me forever. At first, obviously, one thing that also jumped out to me that you work in public affairs, and actually I've never met anyone in public affairs on a visa and work at Cancer Research where it's not known that they sponsor. So first, can you share a bit about your industry, as it's not common for international students to go into?
Yeah. So firstly, a lot of people don't know what public affairs is. So I'm just going to slightly describe it a little bit. So it sits within communications. So we probably often are associated with PR, but also like marketing, internal comms, external affairs. That's all sort of lives in the same family of jobs. But public affairs is basically a job where we communicate the priorities of either a client, if we work for client-based services, or for the organization in which we work, to our stakeholders, who happen to be politicians, civil service, think tanks, etc. And we communicate their priorities to enact policy or legislative change. So that's what public affairs is. And yes, it is fairly rare for international students to get into public affairs. Now, there's various reasons for that. Firstly, you can work for private sector, but you can get sponsored like I did at the time. But when I was being sponsored, the minimum wage requirement was £25,600. It's 38,700 now. And at entry level, public affairs does not pay great, I will be honest. At entry level in private sector, I started on when I was working part-time on London living wage. And then when I went full-time, I was making 24,000. So today, if you are applying for that job, the entry-level job requirements will not pay you sufficiently to get a skilled worker visa. You can probably get by with a graduate visa, but like they won't sponsor you the same way that I was sponsored, most likely. Or you can work for the charity sector. Now, again, before the immigration rules changed around this time last year, the minimum salary requirement was either whatever that sort of job code indicated, or it was, I think, 25,600. Charity sector, obviously, like Cancer Research UK, we are funded by people donating money, and charities have to be really smart with their money so that they can invest in things like Cancer Research does, like research. And because of that, largely, they don't sponsor visas very often. I got incredibly lucky that Cancer Research UK decided to sponsor me. But at the time that I applied in January 2023, the minimum salary was still 25,600. So my salary was above that, so it was completely fine, and etc. Mind you, Cancer Research UK also paid the entirety of my visa immigration fees.
Oh, wow.
I didn't pay a penny for this
Wow,
visa.
that's nice.
That is not the case. So jobs at my level now, we don't sponsor at Cancer Research UK because it's simply, they don't make enough money.
Yeah.
So yes, public affairs is a very rare industry to get sponsored, at least at like not senior level. I think it's slightly different when you're sort of senior leadership. And then on top of that, I'd also add that there's a lot of people who work in charity sector who aren't British originally, but they tend to be people who are either European or people who, you know, had European settled status or had legal right to work in the UK without needing a visa. So they're in a slightly different situation than I was at the time. Mind you, I have 3 passports, so you would think at least one would work here, but yet none of them were appropriate for what I was trying to do.
Oh, well, try your luck.
Yeah.
But wow, I mean, you started work since 2018, and it sounds like the salary has not increased over the years in London.
It almost feels like it's decreased considering the cost of living, but yes.
It's quite crazy, yeah. And what drew you to this industry?
Well, I was doing a degree in politics, obviously, and the story is simple, really. I was studying Eastern European studies and Russian politics, and I didn't realize until about 6 months into living in the UK, firstly, that I immediately fell in love with the city and wanted to stay in London, but also that I actually had a deep fascination for British politics and realized, actually, I want to do work that influences legislation. I want to work on elections. I want to do all of these things. But my love for influencing, hopefully for good things, and I fully consider that the job that I do at the minute, we are making the world a better place. And I think maybe people will say I'm young and naive and all of these things, but I genuinely think that each one of us can make a small difference in the world.
Yeah.
And when I thought about what I wanted to do with my life, I wanted to make the world a better place. And this is a job where I get to do that every day. I meet people in my work who are living with cancer or who have lost loved ones to cancer. And every time I meet these people, I think, oh my God, how lucky I am to be able to do work to make their lives potentially better. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe 10 years from now. And I mean, we are closer than we have ever been to finding a cure for cancer. And the organization that I work for is at the front line of this. So it's an exciting place to work, but it's also the work is important.
Wow, I love to hear that passion and that you make passion work for you as well, because a lot of people, when they come to the UK, they might think that I have to choose sponsorship and not going to be able to do what I want to do. But then you follow your interest from your study and then you found your way. And even though with the challenges that you say, the layoff, which I want to dive in and see how you actually got out of that. But despite all that, you are where you are today and still so passionate about what you do. And I think that's very inspiring. So let's go back to the beginning. When you were at your uni, how did you even get your first internship?
Yeah, so I actually didn't have an internship. What I had was a part-time job. So in my second year of university, I thought to myself, oh, I quite fancy getting a bit of work experience. Also, to be fair, it's an expensive city to live in. And whilst I was very lucky because my mum was giving me sort of an allowance, I was like, I feel a bit guilty. She's a single mum. She works really hard. I should maybe attempt to sort of pay my way a little bit. And I was looking for jobs and I was sort of exploring things that I could do alongside my degree. And obviously, I could only work a maximum of 20 hours. So that was also a challenge there. But basically, I networked. I met a bunch of people who were like, hey, do you want to like get into public affairs maybe? Like maybe work a bit part-time. I went in for an interview at my last job. I got it. And then I worked part-time. At the time, the company was very, very small. I think we were like 5 people in the office at the time. It wasn't a startup at the time. My ex-boss had been running the company for quite some time at that point. But it was still very much in its infancy. I guess it was partially because he saw sort of like, well, it is labor that somebody's providing. I was being paid just above London living wage. So it was largely benefited both of us. I got the experience, he got the labor. But when I was moving sort of towards the last 6 months of my degree, I sat him down and said, hey, I quite like working for you and I would like to continue to work for you. And sometimes, excuse my language, you just have to have the balls to ask. So I was bold, I asked, and he said, yeah, okay, let's get a sponsorship license. So they got a license specifically for me.
Oh, wow.
They sponsored me. I did pay for my own visa at that time. And I worked there until I lost my job. And then that was sort of when I had to start looking for a new one. But I will be honest here, and I do a few talks sometimes for students who are international students and are asking me, how do you do this? You don't get to be a wallflower. You don't get to sort of wait to be asked. You have to actively and aggressively pursue opportunities, because you will get rejections more often than you will get a yes, but all it takes is one yes for you to get that sponsorship. Over the last couple of years, the thing that I've realized, and I don't know if this is part of, getting older, I'm still fairly young, I'm still in my mid-20s, or if it's more to do with the fact that my life experiences have taught me this. The best thing you can be is you. And if people don't want you, don't be there. But I was, I think the reason that I appealed to them was that I was trying really hard to fit in while simultaneously I couldn't hide the fact that I was different. So I benefited from that. Today, I probably would have approached it a little bit less trying to fit in and a bit more being myself, and I think I would have probably had the same success.
No, I can definitely relate to that feeling, and I think it feels definitely quite deep, very deep, right? Like when you come here on such a long journey here, for some reason you feel like you have to get there, and you're getting more and more like you're wanting to get to that destination, but obviously on the way it's so many challenges, and especially in your situation where you talk about getting laid off as well in the middle of your visa, and I could only imagine how difficult that was, how you feel like maybe all the goals that you set for yourselves now could be into nothing. So how did you deal with that?
So I it was a really difficult situation because so I had applied to renew my skilled worker visa. Nobody had given me any indication that this wasn't going through. I'd applied, I'd paid the money, and 3 weeks later I get fired from my job. And there's a visa processing, and I am sitting there and I am watching my dreams slip away from me. And I was able, so firstly, you have to advocate for yourself. I was like literally in my nightmare situation, but not only did my last job pay back the money that I had spent on that visa, which I argued for in my settlement, but also I was put on gardening leave. So the 90 days that I usually would have had to find a job, I had 3 months. So I gave myself every advantage possible. And even then, it was terrifying because I was staring down the barrel of a gun. I had nowhere to go. You might think 3 passports. What do you mean you had nowhere to go? I'm a first generation American. I don't have a single member of my family who lives in the US. My mother is an international employee who lives in Europe. I don't have a European passport. I cannot stay in Europe for longer than 60 days. My father lives in Israel, and I'm still of the age at the time that if I went back to Israel, they would take me immediately into the army.
Oh, God.
Russia was already at war, sort of at war with Ukraine. Can't go there. So where the hell am I supposed to go? On top of that, my entire life was here. My friends, my partner. I was very much in the mentality of this would be the end for me. I have a chronic mental health condition. I'm bipolar. So you can imagine also staring down this situation also had a massive impact on my mental health. But ultimately, I told myself, there is no plan B. There is I am not leaving. They will drag my dead body out of this country before I leave. I am determined. We are going to make it. I will fight and claw and scream and yell until I get what I want. So instead of panicking, crying about it, which I also did, but instead of sort of embodying all of those emotions immediately and just staying with them, I thought, okay, let's look at the situation logically and try and approach it in the best way possible. So I looked through my options and I thought, okay, I'm going to take the sponsorship license list of the 10,000 companies that they have. And I'm going to compare that list with organizations that do work that I want to do. Not just work that I want to do. I wasn't just looking at public affairs. I was like, all of the transferable skills. We're looking at advertising, marketing, internal comms, external comms, PR, everything. I made myself a list of like 600 companies.
Wow.
And I went, cool, let's start from A and work our way down. If they had a job opening at a level that was appropriate for me, I was applying to a job opening. If they didn't have a job opening, I was finding the HR person on LinkedIn and I was emailing them. I lived on LinkedIn. I lived on Indeed. I applied and applied and applied. I looked this up before I came on here. I applied to 121 jobs.
Oh, wow.
I had 20 interviews and I got 1 offer.
Oh, wow.
All it took was 1. But I systematically went through the process. I got to last round interviews multiple times, only to be rejected because of the visa situation, where they said, you are our best candidates, but we simply cannot afford to sponsor at the minute. And this job was the last one I applied for. I had a final interview round processing at the time. It was between me and another candidate in a private company. And I went into this interview and I went, oh my God, I want this job. I want this job so badly. And I went for the job. I got the sort of interview task and I looked at it and I said, I can do this job. I can do this job with my eyes closed. I have all of the qualifications. I am equally as good for this job as anybody else. So why can't it be me? So I did the interview task. I did the interview and I remember leaving the interview going, I have put my all into this. Like there is nothing more I can give but this. And my interview was on a Friday and I got the call on the Monday.
Oh, wow.
And you can imagine the emotions that you feel when you're like, that's it. I've made it. I've done it. Excuse my language, but I did it. I actually did the thing. And also coupled with the fact that they paid for everything, obviously a massive boon following sort of months of thinking I have to pay for all of this again. But yeah, basically persistence, perseverance, having a sort of a plan of action, not sort of approaching it in manic chaos, but thinking about like, how do I do this systematically and how do I give myself the best chance of success? And I'm not saying I didn't apply to companies that didn't have a sponsorship license, but I tried different things to see if they would work. I tried not telling them until the very last stage. Waste of my time, waste of their time. So at the end, I was just really upfront. I just sort of, if they invited me for an interview, I said, I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time. I need a sponsored job at this point. If that's not something you can provide, my apologies. Thank you so much for your time.
So with Cancer Research UK, you had that conversation up front about
Yes,
sponsorship?
I had the conversation before the interview even started. I had written an email to my now manager saying, just by the way, this is the things that CRUK would need to do. And clearly, in my opinion, again, different people might think differently. I think that's the best approach. I firmly believe that honesty is the best policy. But again, you also don't want to do 6 rounds of interviews only for somebody to then go, actually, I'm really sorry. We've decided that we're not going to sponsor this job now. And then you've just gone, well, that's 3 months of my time just gone then.
How long was the interview process at that company?
I had 1 interview.
Yeah, oh wow,
One
that's good.
interview. Charities don't tend to do more than 2 on average. Although I have heard of people doing 3, but at my level, 1 was sufficient.
That's good because the timeline was so short at that time.
Oh yeah,
right?
I was very swiftly running out of time. My gardening leave ran out in 3 weeks. So I was really down to the wire.
So that was like the 200-ish job application was that one?
Yeah, 121.
Oh, see, so many people I know watching this applying for like 30 jobs and say like, oh, I applied too much. I heard nothing back. Nothing working out.
Oh no, keep going. I was like, every day it was a minimum of 3 jobs, if not more. I was applying to everything. And if there were no applications open, I was finding people who worked for HR in the companies that I wanted to apply to and just like cold emailing them. Because again, the worst thing that can happen is you hear nothing back. You're already hearing nothing back.
Yeah.
So just keep going.
Did you just send the same CV? Did you tailor them?
I wasn't getting anywhere with my original CV. So I paid someone to have a look at it and I adjusted it to industry standard, I guess. And I made it so that it covered as broad of a spectrum as possible. And then once I'd done that, I sent that CV everywhere, but I tailored my cover letters.
Did you reach out to people on LinkedIn?
Yes.
Did it work?
On occasion, it got me into sort of interview stage, but I wouldn't say that reaching out on LinkedIn sort of made that the process easier. It just gave me more options of where to apply.
Oh, wow. I'm very, very impressed by your journey and by your determination at that stage. It was incredible to hear. And honestly, I've heard so many people going through the same journey, and obviously it is very challenging, and I feel like only with that kind of determination, that feeling like this is my last option I want to push through, that got you through.
It's one of the things that I've started to say to people who are sort of at the point in their career where they're like, okay, I'm already on a visa, maybe I'm considering moving up a step and I'm gonna probably have to move away from the job that I currently have. I always say that ultimately, you have an experience that the majority of the candidates that are going to be interviewing don't. So when in an interview, if somebody asks me, is there anything else you want to tell us? I'd say, you will never find anybody with more determination or perseverance than me. Because when, the time is tight and when everything's gone wrong and when it feels like the entire world is crashing down and you are cutting it down to the wire, that's where I make magic. And also, like the amount of times that I've heard people who are international, who are applying for jobs in the UK, who say, yeah, but like, why would they pick me over somebody else? And I go, but that's the mentality that's not going to get you anywhere. You have to go, why wouldn't they pick me? You have to almost be deluded enough to say I'm special. I will not lie and say that I made like sort of massive sacrifices to be in the UK. I had a mum who had who put every last, effort into me, who had the money to give me the best opportunities possible. But the amount of people that I know who, the story that all of the Americans say, my grandfather came here with $5 in his pocket. But I've met people who, are here, international students on a scholarship, barely making ends meet. How many people can say the same thing, that you moved away from everyone you know into a country you do not know, sometimes speaking almost primarily in your second language, like you, for example? You're special because you had, as we say in Yiddish, the chutzpah to try. And lots of people will never leave the small village or small town or the city or the country that they're from. And you've traveled millions, hundreds, thousands, tens of miles to come to a new country just because you wanted to give it a shot. That makes you special. That makes you unique. And you should capitalize on that in an interview.
Well, I'm sure many international students watching this will feel seen by you saying that. And it's so true that you need to advocate for yourself and know what is your advantages and sell that and not sell yourself short and think of yourself and what you do and the fact that you are not from here as a liability or something to be sorry for. But a lot of time people do that. From a mental perspective, I know it must be so hard, and you mentioned your mental health as well. How did you manage that in this process?
Badly and first and better later. I think I struggled pretty badly at the beginning just because it felt so hopeless. But ultimately, I have the best support system possible. My family doesn't live here, but I have the most supportive parents and grandparents in the world. I have my incredible partner, Peter, we had only been dating for 9 months at the time, and we're together for nearly 3 years. He's definitely a keeper because we experienced what could have been an absolute disaster less than a year in. And he didn't just stick by me. He was there by my side every step of the way. And he's honestly probably one of the only reasons that I didn't lose my mind during this entire process. And then I have also incredible friends who were always there to listen. And even though, they're all Brits and they've never experienced anything like this, just to have people who say, hey, if you need a distraction, let's do distraction. If you want someone to listen, I'll be here to listen. But also, investing, if you have the money, and invest in therapy. Therapy is really good. And for all the men out there who aren't doing therapy, do therapy.
No, I agree. I'll advocate for therapy as well. Before we discuss further, now we have a little bonding session where we're going to eat food from each other's country, where I have asked Sophia to prepare some food today, and I have prepared some food as well.
I love Vietnamese food.
So this is called mango tofu salad.
Okay.
And it is a Vietnamese salad. And I'm excited for you to try this today.
I'm really excited. I love Vietnamese food, so this is very much up my alley.
Have you had this before?
No, I have not. That's really good.
Do you cook at home?
I do, although my partner's really the chef.
Do you make salad?
Basically, we cook whatever we're feeling like. My partner's very good at making Italian food.
Oh, wow. Okay, now we're going to try the next one that Sophia prepared today. You want to describe what?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to describe it. So this is Olivier, or Olivier salad in English. Basically, any Russian family has their own version of this. I make it the same way my mum does. So it's got chicken, usually boiled chicken, potatoes, carrots, gherkins or pickles. It's especially good if you do spicy pickles. Apples, eggs, and then on top of it, it's just salt, pepper, mayonnaise, and I like to put a little bit of mustard into mine. And we traditionally eat this for New Year, which when the communists forbade religion in the Soviet Union, it became our Christmas. So we do all of the Christmas traditions on New Year, and we eat
this.
Olivier.
Oh, so what is this one then?
So there's gherkins in there.
Oh, that gherkins. Yeah. Okay, let's try. I can taste mustard. Mm. Do you make this often?
I always make it for New Year or for Christmas. Sometimes I really crave it. Reminds me of home, so I make it sometimes. And my partner really likes it, so I make it for us sometimes. I originally was going to make borscht, which is Russian, Ukrainian, Belarusian. Everybody basically in Eastern Europe does it. It's a beetroot soup, but then I thought about the concept of bringing that soup on a train for 2.5 hours and thought, maybe not.
No, this is perfect. That was nice. Thank you for preparing that.
You're most welcome.
Did it take you long to prepare?
No, it's a really easy dish to prepare, which is what I thought would sort of make it easier to bring in. But yeah, I had my Friday night activity.
Yeah. How big do you usually prepare it in? Like a big pot?
I cook as if I'm cooking for like a family of 12. So Peter's going to be eating this for the rest of the week.
So why did you decided to come to the UK? I know that you say you love it here, but why did that? Because obviously you have many options to go with your passports.
I think the main reason was I have loved everything British since I was a little girl. I read British literature. I watched British films. I grew up like watching James Bond with my parents, and Jane Austen is my favorite writer. And, you know, I thought it was beautiful. I'm a big history buff, and I thought that it's a beautiful country. I like the weather. I'm going to be honest. I'm one of the people who likes rain, so it's right up my alley. I don't like it when it's too hot. But about 4 years before I moved here, I went to a summer camp in St. Andrews, and I fell absolutely in love with Scotland. So it was the first part of the UK that I absolutely fell in love with. And I actually applied to university in Scotland, but at the end ended up deciding that I was going to go to London instead. It took me all of 6 months to decide that this is where I wanted to live. I'd lived in 6 countries. I'd lived in 5. This was country number 6. And I always felt like an outsider. I always felt like I didn't belong. I felt like a nomad, like a traveler. And I often felt like I had 3 passports and no home. And I came here, and what I always got from Brits was, would you like to be one of us? Cool, great. Done deal, bish bash bosh, sorted. The immigration system is hell, but people on a day-to-day reacted to me as if there couldn't be anything more natural than me being here. And, you know, when I lived in the US and I spoke with a heavy American accent, and logically everything about me fit with the American story, I still felt excluded, unwanted. And then being here, I never felt that outside of sort of the immigration journey. So the choice to come here came from sort of I want an adventure. You know, you're 18 years old and you want to go on an adventure. But the decision to stay here came down to the fact that it's the only place I've ever felt like home. And then also, again, you build a life here. Friends are the family you choose. And I chose mine incredibly well. And I would do anything possible to stay near them. And ultimately, that's what keeps me here, is the idea that one day I will walk through the passport gates at Heathrow or Gatwick with my British passport and think, I'm home, baby. Nobody can tell me anything ever again. I will never have to see the bloody Home Office ever again, unless I'm renewing my passport.
You planted your root, basically.
Yes.
Yep. And throughout your story, I definitely see a strong sense of being obviously very determined, and also that you really take control of your journey. So a lot of skills involved in there. For example, networking, negotiation skills. Do you have any tips for people on how to improve these skills? I know that you emphasize on advocating for yourself, but for some people that might not come natural. Do you have any tips for people to do more of that?
Well, so I will confess that people skills are kind of like an essential part of my job in general. It's also why I chose the job that I have. I'm a people person. But ultimately, this might sound rough, but you kind of don't have a choice. You don't get to be a wallflower. You don't get to be sort of on the sidelines with your Prosecco at a networking event looking nervously around. You gotta get in there, because ultimately everyone else has a leg up on you. So you're already starting with a disadvantage. So why would you not be more proactive? I think part of it is practice, exposure, trying networking. Universities, if you're still studying, have excellent networking opportunities, and I would take advantage of those as much as possible. But also, ultimately, it's when I was younger, my mother used to always tell me that you don't just have to be the best; you have to be the best of the best. I come from a Jewish family, and again, as I've said, I'm a first-generation American. But the thing I often think about when it comes to these things is there used to be Jewish quotas in Ivy League universities in the US, where you had already to get into Harvard, you have to be incredible, right? And there was such a small quota for Jews that they didn't only have to be good enough for Harvard. They had to be better than everybody else and their own cohort of Jews to get in. That's who you have to be. You've got to be the kid who's aiming for the quota, even if there isn't one. And that's sort of the mentality you have to get into. And it's not about being like, oh, if I don't make it, I'm a failure. Firstly, you get into the mentality that failure is not an option. And secondly, you get into the mentality of thinking, every time I get rejected, it's a lesson so that next time I get accepted. And again, it only takes one yes and you're in, right? And I think, and it's really easy for me to say this with hindsight of 2 years of being, nice and comfy in my nice job. And I think as somebody who, if somebody said that to me back when I was going through the motions of trying to get this job, I would say, what do you know? You clearly had it easy. But I'm telling you, as somebody who didn't have it easy, you have to just persevere, battle through it, and taking time for you, taking time to, recharge, taking breaks, being kind to yourself. And when I say the mentality of failure is not an option, it's not about being like, if you fail, you have to be really hard on yourself or anything like that. You just have to go into everything going, I'm going to clutch at every opportunities. I will grab with my nails and scrape my way up if I have to. Because ultimately, it builds resilience. But not only that, like 2 years on, that experience of losing my job made me who I am. I am where I am today, as successful as I am today, as I have so much pride in the fact that against all the odds, I made it. And I get to use that for the rest of my life. Every time that something feels like I'm failing at it, I tell myself, do you remember that time when against all odds you made it? You can be that. You can look back 5 years from now and go, I scraped my way up, but I made it. And it was worth the pain, the hardship, and the tears.
That's what builds real confidence as well from inside, because you have evidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so would you say, just do it, and the more you do it, the better you'll be?
Yeah.
Yeah, and don't be shy from that.
No, don't be shy. And, if you're sitting there on asking yourself, ooh, I don't know, will I fit in here? Will I, will this networking event have really like brilliant people who are so much better than me, better dressed than me, wealthier than me, more British than me, etc., etc. Well, you didn't go yet, did you? So how do you know? How do you know? How do you know that you're not going to fit in? How do you know that you're not going to be good? You haven't tried yet. And you have to look at every sort of like networking event and like, this could be the one. This could be the specific networking event that gets me to where I need to be.
You also don't have the luxury of not trying
No.
and not missing out on that opportunity, because that could be it and that could change your life as well.
100%.
Thank you so much for joining me. And I've actually have so many more I want to talk to you. We are at time today, but thank you. I think that many people have learned so much from your journey, and I love the passion and the energy and the determination, resilience that you put through, and how much that really it is. Like, I love the message that you say, like, advocate for yourself, and you don't have another choice, another option. This is it, and you have to see this opportunity. And I'm sure many people will feel that inspiration today.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing your story. I've been following you for quite a while, and it's great to meet other people who have the same experience as me. And I'll just say that, you know, you can find me on LinkedIn if you have questions. I'm friendly. You can talk to me, and you know, I walked through the door, scraped my way in. I'm hoping that I can hold the door open for other people as well.
Oh, that's amazing. And I think that's what we want to do through this podcast as well. Thank you. And thanks for our viewer for tuning in. See you again for another episode of Landed. Hi, thank you so much for watching and listening. I hope you enjoy it. To support the show, remember to like, subscribe, and leave comments. You can also follow me on Instagram at Ellen Nguyen Official, where I post content more regularly. See ya!